Hi, my name is Harry. In the current episode of my life, I'm having my best life. I'm healthier, wealthier, more productive, and making a difference in people's lives. This was not my story a few years ago. The former version of me used to be a miserable narration. I was flat broke, in debt, dejected, and often financially embarrassed. All this and more happened to me while I was in medical school, and it was a dreadful experience. Let me give you some more details. At 29, I found myself still in medical school, 2 years behind my peers who had already graduated and begun their internships. My journey was fraught with numerous challenges that forced me to take a hiatus from my medical studies for about 2 years. The root cause of my struggles revolved around finances. There simply wasn't enough money to cover tuition expenses or pay my bills. The financial strain weighed heavily on both me and my family. During this time, my father, a retired quality control inspector, worked for one of Seattle's largest solar engineering companies, eventually retiring as a senior quality control officer. Despite his high-ranking position, my father's earnings were insufficient to meet the needs of our family, especially considering the significant health issues my mother was facing. A few months after I started medical school, my mother was involved in a terrible accident. I received the devastating news and immediately returned home. The scene I encountered at the hospital's emergency unit that day was grim. My mother had been driving home after a particularly intense court case. With over 15 years of experience as a lawyer, she had faced numerous challenges, but that day's case was particularly taxing. Overwhelmed by stress, she lost control of her car and collided with the stationary truck loaded with steel. The impact was severe, resulting in a chest injury that led to a collapsed lung, medically known as pneumothorax. A sharp object had pierced her lung upon impact, causing it to collapse. We held on to hope that things would improve. Despite being discharged from the hospital within 3 days, my mother's condition continued to worsen with recurrent episodes. What began as primary spontaneous pneumothorax, according to the doctor, progressed to secondary spontaneous pneumothorax, and eventually escalated to respiratory failure. Witnessing her deteriorating state fueled my interest in advanced medical science, as I observed the challenges doctors faced in treating her condition year after year. Returning to school became increasingly difficult as I grappled with the weight of my mother's medical struggles. The pressure to find a solution consumed me, especially as our family's finances were drained by her mounting medical bills. Eventually, we found ourselves completely bankrupt. It was during this challenging time that I found myself on the phone with her one day while still in medical school. "Mom, I don't want to lose you. I'm getting more scared every day."
My boy, you won't lose me. And no matter what happens, I'll still be with you.
"Mom, I love you. Please get better, please."
Son, I'll be at your graduation this time, so just focus, and I'll be the first face you see at your graduation. Remember, my love for you will always be a guiding presence in your life.
By the time my mother's health crisis deepened, I was already in my second year of medical school. To add to the complexity of my situation, I was appointed as the leader of my class project group, which is where I first started talking to Kamala. Despite the heavy emotional burden from home, I managed to maintain excellent academic performance. However, as my leadership responsibilities in school increased, I inadvertently gained more attention and fame than I had anticipated. While I didn't want to allow myself to be further distracted by my family's situation, I couldn't ignore the attraction from some female classmates. I suspected that my role as a class leader played a significant part in their interest. Despite my best efforts to stay focused, the dynamics of my academic and personal life began to intertwine in unexpected ways. Kamala and I became incredibly close, starting as just partners for our class projects. We had an intuitive understanding of each other and consistently shared similar ideas on how to excel in our assignments. I admired her determination and commitment to ensuring that we consistently delivered high-quality work within the given deadlines. Her remarkable qualities, coupled with our seamless teamwork, sparked a growing interest in her among my other classmates. After one particularly successful assignment, we engaged in a conversation that extended into a long and meaningful discussion. This conversation laid the foundation for our formal relationship, as we discovered a deeper connection beyond our academic collaboration.
You know, Harry, I've always wanted to ask you something.
Okay, what's that?
I've observed your leadership qualities, and I must admit, I'm impressed by how effectively you balance your academic commitments, class projects, and other essential tasks. How do you manage to juggle everything so successfully?
Well, I could say the same about you.
Oh, come on, Harry, please. Don't flatter me. Nobody does it better than you do, so just fill me in. I need to upgrade my leadership skills. And in addition to what I've observed from your style, I think I might need some more guidance, please.
Well, I'm no genius, and I'll say I just carry out my responsibility with my best abilities and with determination. I can't say I have any special gifts, but I can say I learned a lot from my parents.
Wow, that's awesome. Can you tell me about them?
Alright, my dad is an amazing man and a very responsible father. He has no favorites in the house. Well, except my mom. He made it pretty clear to all of us, the children, from our teenage years, that none of us could steal his wife's love.
Seriously? You must be kidding. Wow, I love that.
Yeah, one day while the whole family was at home, me, my brother Luca, my grandmother, and my grandfather with my two nephews, my dad cracked us all up with another reminder.
Yeah, what did he say?
He said, "You all know that no matter how beautiful and amazing you all are, there was a source of that beauty, and that's your mother. So don't you ever think I'd trade you fellas for my wife, who came first into my life, when you all were somewhere hanging in heaven. No, it ain't gonna happen. So you can go and get yourselves your wife and husband and leave us alone."
Haha, that's so fantastic. I admire the bond between your dad and your mom. That's something I'd love to have too. I love your family. You guys seem amazing. I'd love to meet them one day.
You're welcome, Kamala. What about you? How about your parents? I believe they're just as amazing.
Nah. My parents have been separated for about 14 years now. And I think it's probably one decision they both considered carefully, because it turned out that it worked for both of them afterward. Well, except for me.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Kamala.
Please don't be. They're both doing fantastic since they separated, and that made me feel they probably weren't just meant for each other. Although I'd love to have both my parents together, to share the love and bond closer and deeper every day, it's only a dream for me now. Anyway, I've made up my mind that my kids won't have to experience that, which means I must be careful when I'm choosing the man I'll end up with.
After that day, our relationship soared to another level, and for the first time in over 2 decades, I found myself with a girlfriend. At 26 years old, I had never been in a committed relationship before. My strongest bond had always been with my parents, and my mother jokingly referred to me as her second boyfriend after my dad. Her love and companionship were all I ever desired from anyone else. I must admit, my mother did an excellent job preparing me for my first relationship. We often had discussions about emotional energy and connections with the opposite gender, and it was always enlightening to talk about these topics with her. She possessed a deep understanding of relationships, which wasn't surprising considering how she, alongside my dad, maintained such a strong and harmonious marriage that kept our family together. Drawing from this knowledge and my mother's teachings on relationships, I felt confident that my own love life would follow a similar path. However, things didn't quite turn out that way. It had been almost 2 years since my mother's terrible car accident, and the struggle was real for me in school. With no more money to cover her medical bills and my own tuition fees at risk, depending on my family for financial support was no longer feasible. I knew I had to take action. In my 3rd year of medical school, I found myself in a dire situation where there was simply no money available to pay my tuition. At that time, my annual tuition fee amounted to $59,162, meaning I needed at least $120K to graduate. Faced with this predicament, I began brainstorming solutions. Kamala and I had been getting along well, and I can't deny that she had been helpful to me for some time. Despite her parents being separated, she had devised clever ways to collect money from both of them. Whenever I needed assistance, she would contribute from the funds she had managed to gather from her parents. However, after a while, she grew weary of providing me with financial support. Although I was uncomfortable relying on my girlfriend to provide for my needs, I also felt irresponsible. Whenever I asked her for money, I couldn't help but notice her cold attitude towards me, which created tension in our relationship. Despite this, I tried to remain calm and navigate through the awkwardness. However, I knew I needed to find a solution to my financial struggles. I brainstormed a business idea that I could pursue alongside my academic studies, but I lacked the capital to get started. Reluctantly, I turned to Kamala once again for assistance. Harry, I don't understand you anymore. You're my boyfriend, and you're supposed to be the one taking care of me. But I understand the situation, and I've not been complaining. But right now, you want me to borrow you some money for our business? That won't work, Harry. I just can't. Babe, please understand that this isn't how things used to be for me. I've tried to explain to you multiple times that I don't receive any financial support from home. My mother has been ill for years. Yeah, I know about that. You won't stop drumming it in my ears. I know, but I can't keep feeding you with all my savings. Soon, my parents will find out that I'm exhausting my money too early. And I know my mom. She'll soon demand an explanation for what I spend my money on. And I'm not ready to prepare some stories to feed her. Okay, I understand. What if I promise you that this would be the last time? How? Where do you get the money to pay your bills and take care of yourself? From the business you've not even started yet? Come on, Harry, just go and find another way. There's no way I'll cough up $1,300 for your business idea. I'm sorry. It has been an incredibly challenging experience for me since that time. However, as I reflected on my situation, I realized that I had skills I could leverage to earn some income. I decided to offer my services as a private tutor, both in person and online. Additionally, given my experience as a project lead, I knew I could excel as a freelance project writer for students in my school and beyond. I began applying for tutoring and writing gigs online, and I quickly secured some clients who paid me to tutor their children in basic science, chemistry, and biology. While the offers were enticing and I could earn between $20 and $50 an hour, I soon discovered that balancing these commitments with my demanding medical studies was overwhelming. Initially, I attempted to allocate 4 hours a week to these gigs, earning about $80 in the process. However, the mounting pressure from my studies and existing debts made it impossible for me to save any of my income. Eventually, I made the difficult decision to quit both the tutoring and project writing jobs. Instead, I sought additional loans to cover my tuition fees, which I obtained from the Student Union Association at school. With their support, I was able to pay my tuition fees before the grace period ended, providing temporary relief from my financial struggles. Things got bad at home a few weeks later. Luke had called me and informed me of a major complication in Mom's health, and it'd require a huge sum of money. When Luke had called and gave me the latest report on Mom's health, I became scared. What are you saying? What complications are you talking about? Has she not been taking her medications? What happened? Harry, I don't understand it myself. Just 2 days ago, she was reaching out to grab her phone from the shelf, and then we heard a scream from her room. What? What happened? I was the first to enter the room. When I arrived, I found her lying on the floor. It was evident that she had fallen heavily. Suddenly, she started convulsing and shaking uncontrollably. My God! How did that even happen? After some time, she began to lose herself. She was struggling to breathe, gasping for air. We had to take her to the hospital immediately, after the doctor had examined her and run a couple of medical tests. He called Dad into his office and gave him the report. The original pneumothorax condition, which had already graduated into respiratory failure, later graduated into tension pneumothorax, obstructive shock, which was very fatal. This complication caused her to pass out several times and caused her to have shortness of breath and low blood pressure. According to the doctor, the only way to keep her alive is to take her through surgery, but the surgery was not the problem. It's the bills. We were to pay $5,500 for the surgery. Meanwhile, at that time, I already had over $95,000 in debt to pay, which was a backlog of loans I'd taken to cater for my bills in school, including my tuition fee. Everything my dad had left, together with Luca's savings, only rounded up to $2,200. So I had to resort to taking another loan. This was about my mom's health. I couldn't just sit and abandon her in that terrible condition. When I informed Kamala about the situation, she expressed sympathy for my mother and our predicament, but that was the extent of her response. Initially, she accused me of fabricating the story to ask for more money from her, effectively shutting down any possibility of receiving financial assistance for the bills. This is a lame attempt, Harry. I'm not as stupid as you think. Your mom can't be in the hospital. You said you spoke with her 3 days ago, and from the way it seemed, there was already a significant improvement in her condition. I can't believe you think I'd lie to you about my mom's health. Why'd I do that? I don't know, because sometimes you can be unbelievable and behave like a weirdo. Come on, Kamala. Luca called me this morning to tell me about my mom. She had a fall from the couch while reaching for her cell phone on the shelf in her room. There was no one else in the room with her. But when Luca heard her scream, he rushed to her room and found her almost unconscious. She was struggling to breathe and had to be taken to the hospital immediately. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Harry. That is serious. I hope there were no further complications. The situation is much more serious than it appears, and I urgently need to secure this loan as soon as possible. Well, Harry, I just cannot help right now. I'm sorry. There's no way I can give you that kind of money. I'm sorry, and we cannot continue like this. I hope you'll find the money on time anyway. I was deeply distressed after our conversation, primarily because of my mother's situation at the hospital, and secondly, because Kamala had turned me down when I needed her the most. That conversation marked the beginning of the end between me and Kamala. Once again, I had to resort to taking another loan, this time from a private emergency fund group. I borrowed $7,000 to cover the cost of my mother's surgery and other necessary expenses that arose at the time. It wasn't a matter of irresponsibility. I had attempted to take on side jobs, but I couldn't balance them with my studies at that moment, and I didn't want to appear irresponsible. By the end of that year, I found myself buried in over $200K of debt from the numerous loans I had taken out. It became evident that I wouldn't be able to continue my studies due to the overwhelming financial strain. Despite applying for multiple scholarships, the only successful opportunity I received was a partially funded scholarship covering 50% of my tuition fees. However, even with this offer, I still couldn't afford the remaining 50% of my tuition for my final year of medical school, let alone sustain myself throughout the year. Additionally, I discovered that the third year of medical school was the most challenging study session I had ever encountered. This was confirmed by my senior students and a few friends who had already graduated, all of whom shared similar experiences during their third year. With the financial burden weighing heavily on me, I made the difficult decision to take a gap year. I couldn't even make it through the entirety of my third year session due to the immense financial pressure. When I discussed this with my academic advisor in school, Dr. Iris, and informed her of my decision and requested her guidance, she was very helpful, not just with her advice and the direction she gave me, but also with her assistance in helping me to secure the gap year permit. I planned to take a 2-year gap permit to enable me to rebalance myself and get back on my feet. So Dr. Iris gave me some tips to achieve that as well.
Okay, Harry. If that's the decision you've made, I understand you. And from your records, you have had some impressive performances already. There are a few students who have done this successfully. But first, I'd like to ask, what are your strategies to recuperate and bounce back stronger upon your return?
Thank you, Dr. Iris. I plan to get a job or some paid opportunity just to regain financial balance and return to complete my medical school before going for an internship.
All right, that's beautiful. However, it may be a little difficult to secure a 2-year gap permit for the reason you want to give. You will be asked to consider other options, like the scholarship you mentioned earlier, taking some side jobs, or some other options to make a few dollars in school.
Oh, I see. That makes sense, but it is really difficult for me right now.
Yeah, however, I understand you perfectly, especially for your mom's health and your family's financial situation. So, here's what I'd propose. You'd write an excellent letter and detail your intentions with sufficient details. But you need to include other essential activities you'd embark on while away from school for that period. One of the most interesting details the school management is interested in is what you'll be learning while you're away to ensure you're returning as a better and more holistic person than when you left. So you could include that you'll take a short-term internship program in the area you want to specialize in after medical school, or learn some skills that aid your medical career endeavors. And not just that you want to go and get a job to make money.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Iris. I'm very grateful for your advice, and I'm glad I came to you. I will ensure to keep all of this in mind when writing my application. Thank you so much. At the end of that week, I called Kamala to inform her of my decision to take a gap year from medical school. I had kept this from her intentionally because I wanted everything settled from my end before filling her up on it. After telling her, she didn't look as surprised as I expected. In fact, she told me she was planning for us to meet for a serious talk before I called her. When she told me what she wanted to discuss, I was stunned. Harry, I'm sorry for how things have turned out for you. Trust me. I could never wish this for you. Oh, come on, Kamala. None of this is your fault. It's my burden to carry. Besides, you've always shared my burden, and I'll be forever grateful for that. All right. Well, I wanted to inform you that I have thought about it carefully and decided that right now in my life, I need a man who can motivate me and support me in every area of my endeavor. Okay, and? But right now, Harry, that's not you. I'm really sorry, but it is what it is. And it's better to be open about how I feel than to beat around the bush. That revelation caught me off guard during our conversation, and I needed some time to digest it. What could she possibly mean? While she had often voiced her dissatisfaction with the level of financial support I provided as her boyfriend, we had managed to navigate through that issue relatively smoothly for quite some time. So I was left wondering what she was trying to convey. Okay, Kamala, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I'm understanding you right now. Harry, I can't continue in this relationship. You've incurred so much debt that you can't possibly repay it in the next few months. And now, to crush the whole thing, you're leaving school, which means you won't be graduating until at least 2 years? And that's if you are able to return at all. I can't see a stable future together. I'm sorry, Harry, but I'm not sure I can do this anymore. It's over between us. In short, Kamala felt embarrassed to have me as her boyfriend due to my financial situation and the fact that I was temporarily dropping out of school. It took me a while to process and come to terms with this revelation, but I must admit, it dealt a significant blow to my confidence and self-esteem. Fast forward 2 years later, and my mother was not only alive, but also much better after her initial surgery. Seeing her recover and regain her strength was more fulfilling to me than anything else in the world. During those 2 years that I took off from school, I pursued various job opportunities and experienced significant successes and accomplishments. I received offers that I never thought possible. Upon my return to medical school, it was no surprise that my classmates had already graduated, and many of them had begun their internships, also known as the first year of residency. During this phase, medical school graduates received training under the supervision of medical professionals before obtaining their license to practice medicine independently. I was able to clear all my debt and also found a good way to balance work and study in school. After I graduated, I went straight for my internship as well, and it was very easy for me and more fun because I took a short-term internship in a private clinic during my gap years. I have lost touch with Kamala ever since. She had already made it clear that she couldn't be with me anymore and that she deserved a better, more stable person. I got an award after my internship as the most outstanding intern, and that was in addition to the Dean's Internship Award I got after med school, which paved the way for a fantastic internship and placement opportunity for me after graduating. Right now, the table has turned again in my favor, and I have now been licensed as a medical doctor and have also been a surgeon for more than 12 years. Today, I am the head surgeon at one of the best hospitals in Boston. However, to my surprise, 2 weeks ago, after handling a very complicated surgery in the hospital where I work, someone was brought to my office who had been booked for surgery 1 week earlier. When I checked the details on the file presented to me, I was astonished. Then, when the patient was brought into my office, I confirmed that it was indeed who I thought it was. It was Kamala. It has been about 17 years since I saw her. Time has changed and many seasons have passed. We looked at each other more closely, and her jaw dropped. Harry? Is this Harry? Yeah, Kamala. Anyway, it's good to see you again. I'm sorry, what are you doing here? Are you one of the nurses? Or are you a cleaner here? Kamala, no. I'm the head surgeon here. And by the file on my desk right here, you have an operation booked for today. and I'll be leading that operation. She had an intestinal blockage, which requires a colorectal resection. When I saw her, those years rolled back in my mind, but it was already past tense. The surgery was successful, and I made sure that everything was perfectly taken care of. But I felt more excited whenever I remembered the shock on her face after the encounter in my office before the surgery. A few days ago, she sent me a text expressing her gratitude for the successful surgery. She mentioned feeling a bit apprehensive when she realized I was a surgeon because she feared I might intentionally complicate the surgery due to our history. However, I assured her that I had moved past any animosity, as it's not in my nature to act in such a manner. She also shared her regret for completely disconnecting from me after medical school, acknowledging the struggles and difficulties she faced during her internship and afterward. Regardless, I was relieved and grateful that the surgery went well and that she's recovering smoothly. I now have all I had wished for. I have my own family now, and we're all doing great. Today, I have dedicated my life to helping others, especially those who have had or are currently having a similar experience as I did some years ago. It turned out that those years of struggle were a preparation for a greater and more fulfilling future for me.